I recently got the chance to paint some of these amazing models from Wild West Exodus, and they were pretty cool. I had a lot of fun painting them. I did a lot of stuff with them. I made a video specifically about this guy, how I ended up getting inspired and painting by them. But I also went and go ahead and painted more that I did not show in videos, but on my Instagram I did post them. And I did a lot of experimentations. I mixed a lot of colors. I'm learning how to do more shadows, things like that. And some of these were amazing, like this vampire hunter that I made, and also this that I got inspired by the Belgian flag, and him that I got inspired by some hazardous material that his cloak and everything is being just engulfed by. And then afterwards, I got into the whole enlightenment box that I had from also War Cradle Studios, and they did some amazing stuff with these models. They are from one of their future games that they're trying to make from the Lost World Exodus. Basically, you can use these guys. They're part of the Enlightened. The Enlightened are the reason why Wild West Exodus exists. And with them, I decided to experiment with the backpack specifically. I wanted to do something like rust, something mossy, and in the end it came out pretty great. I really loved how some of this stuff made. I experimented a lot with them. It honestly took me a while to figure out how actually I wanted to paint these. My entire main focus, I wanted it to be the backpacks because that's how I wanted to start off, like this mossy one. I knew I wanted to make it green, so I had to think about ways to connect other colors with it so it won't look so brazen. But in the end, honestly, I really recommend these models. I really recommend trying out some of the War Cradle games. They're pretty great. Wild West Exodus is one of my favorites, honestly. And I decided that I wanted to make a video how I do my painting, as well as maybe if hopefully it inspires you how to do some rust effects. Maybe not my formula, but maybe you can come up with your own. I started off with Zenosaur Priming because that is how I always start my models. I always like to let the priming guide me. I like to do a lot of light effects when it comes to my models, and Zenosaur Priming is really the best way. It helps you guide your painting to where the shadow should be. Here, I started off with some Averland Sunset because I knew my pants were going to be purple, and the best color that goes opposite with a purple is the yellow. So what I did is I added a lot of black so I can just darken it, and that was going to be my dark shadows. All my shadow, I was only going to place it where my Zenosaur Priming was all in black, because that is essentially where all my shadows were going to land, and the rest of the paint was going to be purple that I added. It was the royal purple from Vallejo, and I added a drop, and then I started mixing my Avalon Sunset darkened version with a little bit of the purple. That way I can have like a mid-tone that can go from that deep dark color to a much brighter. So what I did is just placed it just a little bit higher, and then after that I just did some layering. I like to do a lot of wet blending, so once I placed my purple, I added even just more hints of regular just purple, nothing mixed with it, and in the end it came out pretty great. This is one coat of it, and honestly I really like it. I let it dry, that way I can add already my second coat. And for my second coat I added a little bit of white so I can already start putting my highlights on it, and I started just stippling all over just the raised areas because, like I said, these are very detailed models. I really love these, even though they're in resin, and they have a lot of wrinkles on the pants, and that's pretty cool. It really guides you where actually all the raised areas should be, and I'm basing off that my light source is coming from the top, so I'm only going to be stippling little and in smaller and smaller places, and also kind of thinking where naturally where the light would hit, making it much brighter in certain areas, which is basically how, if you're going to be doing some highlights, I honestly recommend you doing. If you're basing off of where a light source is, just really think about it where you think your model is getting their light source hit, and that is where basically you should be putting your highlights. And so what I did, I only put it in the raised areas and only in the very bottom, because as you go higher in the pants it should be getting darker and darker. And then once I did that, I added more white, and then what I did is I added some water to my mid-tone purple that I had, and I basically did some sort of like glazing so I can blend in my darker shadows with my brighter colors, and in the end it came out like this. Once you let it dry, it's gonna look even better. Right now it's still pretty fresh right off the pot and everything, but it's drying. And what I did is I decided that maybe I should just let it dry even more and just focus on the coat. Now I wanted to add some green because I wanted to be that color to pop out, and it's going to be basically one of my main colors that I want the audience to be focused upon. And I changed the hue by adding some of the Mechanicus standard gray from Citadel colors, and that way I can change the tone. It's not going to be a dark color because naturally where the light is coming for me is coming from the top. It's not going to look really dark. So I decided to do it by changing just the tone with the gray, and honestly it came out great afterwards. I just mixed, like, it was the lime green from Vallejo. I have a lot of Vallejo colors. I really love Vallejo colors, and I decided to make those two together and work on the coat on that. And what I did is basically as I did before, I started off with the darker color and I went higher and higher in colors. And what I do, I like to do a lot of stippling, and it basically works great when it comes to, for me, I'm thinking it's more like a leathery kind of thing. So when you do a lot of stippling at the same time you're coloring, you're giving it a lot of texture. So basically what I do is just go back and forth, and like I also do a lot of wet blending at the same time. So what I like to do is I like to go back and forth from my deepest, my darkest color of lime green to my brightest, and I'm just blending it all together so it can have this natural flow where the light is hitting those raised areas more than it is hitting the bottom areas. And once it's dry, it's going to end up looking like this. This is the next day. I decided to let it just go ahead and dry for an entire day, and honestly once it was dry for an entire day, it looked even better than what it looked the day before. My highlights are pretty great, my coat has a really good nice texture. Also my pants as well got a little bit of a nice little texture going on. For the outer lining of the jacket, I decided to go for red, a very dark red, for the bloody red from Vallejo color, the color range from Vallejo. And I decided to darken it with some black, and like how I did before, I started off with darkest color where there's shadow, where my Zenosaur highlighting, my Zenosaur priming tells me where the shadow is the darkest at. And then afterwards I decided to add some brighter and more pure, I want to say, version of the bloody red from the color range. And from the very edge of the jacket, I decided to change the tone with the gray and the bloody red too, so I can have that cohesive outer edge of the outer lining of the jacket, from going from a very dark red and a bright red to a very, toned down kind of red. So if I'm making myself a sense. But like I said, afterwards I based off where my light source is coming from. For me, it's coming from the top, like I said before, and so that is where I'm putting my highlights. I do wet blending, stippling on the outside, and I keep those darker areas more into the dark red. Afterwards I decided to tackle the boots. It's pretty simple, straightforward. I decided to go with just a pure brown that I mixed with some of the dark purple that I had left, because I was like, why not, maybe this is gonna give it more connection to it. Afterwards I decided to work on the little I think it's like kind of like robes, or like kind of like leather robes that he has on his upper pants. I don't see any utility to these when it comes to the model, but hey, he's going on an expedition to Antarctica because that is where the Lost World Exodus range is going to. And like how I did before, I'm going to be going from my darkest to my lightest, and I'm going to be using again the same technique I use exactly for the pants, that by the time I reach my highest point of brown, I'm going to be adding some of watered down medium tone, so I can make a more cohesive blend to them. And once the boots were done as well, all dried up, I decided to add some of the light brown, and honestly it's coming out pretty great right now. I'm really liking this, how it's looking. Once it's drying, it's looking even better by the minute. And for the other parts of his jacket and other areas, I decided that it's going to be more brown. I know I'm using a lot of brown, but honestly, when you think about the setting of going to an expedition, going to Antarctica, you're gonna have a lot of leather because that is honestly what lasts the most. It can take a lot of really good beating. So I'm assuming that that is what it's going to be taking. So I basically apply the same thing that everyone does when you do your highlights. You just go for your lightest color. Don't go too extreme as well, or just go for a nice. I'm going for a nice realistic look. For the other area of the boots, that little metal part, I decided to go for, again, some of my red. I decided to go for the black red from Vallejo and mix it with some black, and it's coming out pretty great. I decided to again think of where my light was going to hit that part of my model, and so therefore the highest part area in this case is going to be the lightest and the bottom is going to be the darkest. Afterwards I tackle his little satchel that he has on the side. I decided that this is going to be one of my trial things where I'm gonna go for like a rusty kind of look. I again went with the same red color, the black red, but this time I added no black, it was just pure black red, and I wanted to just let it dry off, that way it can be the leather part. Afterwards, his little weapon, it is being siphoned by his backpack on the back, and I decided that I want to keep those three colors cohesive. It's going to be reds, blacks, red, purples, and greens. So what I did, his power source is going to be like a purple pinkish color. So I decided to get my blue violet from Vallejo, and then afterwards add some of the pink from also Vallejo as my highlight color. That way the purple is going to be act as the shadow and the pink is going to act as, you know, that glowy part of the weapon, the liquid that is being siphoned through the weapon and being shot at. And of course the plasma coils is going to have those little highlighted colors as well. And I decided to put that all over just the tube part because there's two little tubes and the other one has some textures to it, and that one is just going to be like regular black kind of gray color, and a white gray color. And for these tubes I decided to add that purple pink plasma kind of look, and they look pretty great. The fact that I'm trying to keep this cohesive color. And once my satchel was dried, I decided to finally add some of my amaranth color that I also mixed it with some black, that way it can get a little bit darkened more. And I decided to start off with that medium tone, not the very dark one, just the medium tone I decided to go for, and just add it just little by little, and afterward just build up higher and higher to my just amaranth color. And I'm adding them in smaller and smaller places. I decided to add also this color to the rest of his kind of like metal areas because I wanted it to be that metal is rusty once you're in Antarctica. They go into this inner world where it's, you know, fantastical. There's a bunch of stuff and it's actually pretty humid, so you know, when it's like copper, stuff like that, they get rusty after a while because it's going to be a lot of humidity, there's forests and stuff like that. And I'm trying to really get into the mood of that environment, and honestly I'm waiting patiently when War Cradle decides to release that game because the range model is amazing once you've seen them through their site as well. I decided for finally start off with the backpack. The main issue that I wanted to get to, not the main purpose of this video, but I want to show off my version of what I think a rusty color is gonna look like. So what I did is I added the mahogany color with black, and I covered that all over the backpack and as well as his little hat. And afterwards I waited for it to dry, that way it can get very opaque in the color that I really wanted to go for, because if I did some wet blending it was not going to be so great. Afterwards I decided to add more amaranth to that brown amaranth blend already, so it can get a little bit brighter. It still retains that brown color to it, and I decided to add it just to the areas where again I hate to repeat myself again, but the areas where the light should be hitting. I'm not going to cover this all over, it's just going to be areas where Logically speaking, in my mind, the light is going to be hitting, and where I think the rust is going to build up the most, where the humidity is going to be hitting it up the most, and that's going to be in the raised areas, as well as the bottom part. I did not want to touch it so much, but I still wanted to add a little bit of rust, because humidity, it just revolves everywhere, so therefore I wanted to just add it everywhere. And afterwards I also did the hat, and what the little paint I had left in the brush, I decided to just go ahead and spread some of that mahogany and amaranth color blend. Just spread it just a little bit more, so it can give a little bit more texture. And my brush did not have any more paint on it, but I decided that I was going to do some sort of like dry brushing with it, just spread the paint, like I said. Once that part of the paint was done and it was dried, I let it dry for a couple of, I think it was like at least half an hour. I decided to finally tackle more of the highlighted areas, where I'm going to try to give it a more rusty look. Of course, right now, since the paint is barely going in, it's gonna look very bright, but once it's dried, it's gonna turn into that dark opaque color that I'm going for. So what I did is I just got like pure amaranth color, and I just decided to put it, like I said, stippling. I decided to just go ahead and go and stipple smaller and smaller areas for my highlights, and just put it in areas, in the highest areas possible. I do not want to cover the whole model with just a complete amaranth, because I wanted to have this little smooth looking rusty feel. When you see a rust, it goes from like a very bright like orangey brown color to like a very dark brown color. So that's what I'm going for, just getting those areas. And I try to go the smaller and smaller as possible. I try to go faster and faster, and then in the end I decided to just go ahead and mix in that amaranth, just a little bit, some of that white that I had, and just make it a little bit even more brighter. But this time just put it in like in dots, in those little bolts that they have, and in the end it looked like this. It's not completely dried yet, but it's already looking pretty great as it is. It's kind of still wettish right now, so once it's dry, it's gonna start to go opaque. But even the reds, as you see, my highlights are looking pretty great already. Afterwards, off camera, I painted his skin and his goggles. I used the Vallejo dark skin color as well as the Vallejo flesh wash, so it can give it more depth. Still working on my skin colors. Still not great at it, but honestly, for what it came out after adding the highlights to the skin colors, it came out pretty great. I just forgot to record that part, but in the end it came out like this. The rust effect that I was going for came out pretty great. This is after one day of letting the paint sit from the flesh and also the backpack. His mustache, I colored it a little bit red, wanted to keep those unified colors. But for the rust effect that I went for, honestly, I really liked it a lot. I will put my formula in the description below if you guys want to try it out for yourself, if you guys want to try it. And honestly, like I said, this model is from the Lost World Exodus from the Enlightened box set. Is pretty great. Here are 4 of them together. I'm still missing 2 to paint, and I'm looking forward to painting those. Once I finish painting those, I will be posting them in my Instagram account. But if you guys like this video, go ahead and comment below if you guys are like the way I painted it, and if it was helpful the way I did it, and if things I need to change. Honestly, it will be help me out a lot. And also, thanks for watching the video. But like I said, I really recommend you some of these models from the War Kratos Studios. They're really amazing models. You should honestly also even try the game itself. It's, if you're used to Warhammer, it is completely different. The settings completely different, and it also is gonna help you, entertain other painting skins. But yeah, go ahead. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, and hopefully you guys subscribe. And you're always welcome in a miniatures tavern.